Good morning. I'm Ryan Leprid, and welcome to our Neutral Voices Financial Pillar. Joining my set again today is my friends JJ Foster, Terrence Bush.
Morning.
Thank you for joining us today.
Morning.
Gentlemen, this is my favorite time of year for a couple different reasons. Number one, March Madness, right? So I got to know, who's your picks? And you cannot pick UConn. Give me two. Who do you think is going to win it all? JJ?
I got a IU and
IU.
my fault. I'm sorry, Terry, my fault.
You must be a Purdue fan.
No, not really. That's a joke. No, I love Mike Wilson. You know what? Purdue actually is kind of set up for them this year to at least make it to the Final Four.
They say that every year.
Yeah, if they don't make it to the Final Four this year, there's going to be some issues. Because I looked at the brackets, but I would like to see Purdue just from being a hometown guy. And outside of that, I'm just looking forward to some good basketball.
Nice. So you're sticking with Purdue even after that early exit last year with a 16 seed? Is that what they lost to?
That's exactly what they lost to. And that's the thing, man. Picking somebody in this basketball tournament is like predicting the stock market. If you know it, hey, good to you, because I don't.
I don't know. There's some teams that pretty good bet they'll exit early. Arizona's another one that usually exits early too. I can always guarantee on. So, Terrence, what about yourself?
Actually, I'm going to go ahead and bow out of that one.
Bow out? Is that not your thing?
Not a fan of March
No?
Madness.
Oh,
Do not follow
dang
that.
it.
That's my bad, though. Sorry.
Dang it.
All right, hold on. Here go the important thing. Where you guys hosting the party at for March Madness? You might not be a fan. I know.
I don't know what party you talking about.
We were having a conversation beforehand. A lot of the banks typically host I know we are where I'm at, hosting a March Madness party just for clients and community leaders and things like that we invite as well. A lot of the banks do. So, So for myself, I'm going to go with my favorite team, North Carolina. I think they're going to win every single year, but this year I actually think that they might do that. Yeah. After the disappointing year they had last year.
Yeah.
Right. Made it to the championship game 2 years ago unexpectedly. Came back last year with high expectations and didn't even make the tournament.
Correct.
That was embarrassing. So
Now, before we get in that financial, all the teams are bowed out to NIT. North Carolina caught flack for it. But to your formula, I look at it, they didn't make the tournament last year, and now look at them, number one seed, or, a one seed. So.
yeah, so that's another topic. That's an interesting conversation. I won't waste too much time on today on that, but off air we can have that conversation. So second reason is my favorite time of year, tax season, right? We got all those tax returns coming in and people don't know what to do with them. Right. So let's pick up where we kind of left off last time. We were talking about banking and savings, kind of focus a little bit more on the savings aspect of that. So before we begin, just throw out a stat to you. A survey done back in 2023 showed 57% of U.S. citizens had less than $1,000 in their savings. Right.
Yes, sir.
And in both 2022 and 2023, 1/3 of Americans had less than $100 in their savings account. What do you think when you hear those numbers?
It speaks to, what I say all the time. We can talk savings all we want, but people that are in survival mode or living day to day, the numbers speak for themselves. People have tight budgets. So when you sit up here and you talk about investing and you talk about savings, you have people that are really scratching their heads like, hey, what do I do? But when you hear those numbers, that's what makes it so important to understand priorities and where that money is going. What is a need and what, we get back into that discussion, because it's crucial.
Absolutely. Terrence?
Definitely. First and foremost, all thoughts and opinions are of my own origin and in no way, shape, or form represent my employer. Hearing those statistics, definitely to piggyback off what JJ said, basically in that survival mode, of course. As we look around and we see the economy, we see how much inflation is impacting things, of course, at the same time. So some finances that you would have allocated towards your savings are probably going towards your day-to-day needs now, of course. I know this is a little bit off topic, but as the prices increase, as we know, the cost of living has also increased as well, but wages have pretty much stayed the same. So in a sense, moving forward in the future, allocating your finances to go towards the savings has been a little bit more rough on some people, but tax season is definitely a good reset, almost in a sense.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what I think too, why I mentioned it that way is tax time's a perfect time of year to save, right? A lot of times we're seeing folks, they get that tax return check and it's like it's Christmas,
New
right?
cars
Oh, it's free
everywhere.
money.
New cars
Government's giving free
everywhere.
money, you know? I was watching a podcast the other day and somebody was giving their opinion. I was like, people, this is not free money. This is your money. This is your money. They've been holding on to you to save for you for the entire year. They're just now giving it back to you, right? If you look at it as free money and you go out and you blow it, you're right back in the same situation, you know, but take that money or take a portion of that and save it up, right? A lot of times we're taking that money and we're going out and immediately buying another car, right? That car, what kind of car are you going to get for $5,000-$10,000, right? With a good tax return check, a car that you're probably going to need to buy another one in another year or two, right?
Yeah.
So
Or
instead
more
of
money into that car.
more money into that car, right? We're talking about the savings, those numbers there. What it stood out to me is that most Americans don't have enough money that if they had one major car maintenance issue, right, $1,000 or more, they couldn't afford it. Right, that's a bad position to be in. You have emergencies come up, kids get hurt, hospital bills, things like that. Most Americans don't have enough money to cover that without going into debt by utilizing a credit card or something like that. Right?
Correct. But that leads into, when you talk about the tax return, if I did have a major incident during the year and I borrowed on, to pay that back or to pay off a debt, something that happened, I had, a major repair, so I had to borrow some money to get it fixed. So now, where's my tax return going? Mm-hmm. I'm paying back all that debt that I sustained from these emergencies, and that's people are living like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's one major way that we can start a savings account. If we get that tax return check, don't go buying cell phones for everybody in the family, right? You know, do you really need that cell phone? Save that money. Look at it as an actual savings, not as Christmas. And then when it comes time to maybe Christmas down the road there, you're not going in debt at Christmas time because you had that money saved up there. But what are some other tips that we would have for our listeners out there when it comes to savings?
I say, we were talking a little bit before the show started, but if you get $1,500 back in a tax return, to your point, savings, I wouldn't just put it in a savings account. There's CDs out there right now. I know we have one at the bank, 4.75. All you need is $1,000. So again, there's ways to maximize that.
So essentially investing that money, right?
There you are, money that you got back, and as you have emphasized, your money you're investing now. It's in your control. So be cognizant of that, and don't just put it in a savings where you're earning 0.01 or whatnot. But there's options out there to shop around for.
And that's a great point. And then, people don't know what options are out there unless they're talking with their banks. And we mentioned last time we were talking about the banking. One of the biggest things is having that relationship with a banker, right? That's one of the main reasons to have that is, have somebody that you can call and say, hey, I just got my tax return check, right? Got $5,000, $7,000, whatever the case may be. What do I have for this, right? I don't want to put in my savings account because it's not growing at all. If you're getting very little interest on it, are there any other options? Your banker's going to know. Right.
And when it comes to like talking about CDs and such, when you get those extra funds back from the tax return, of course, the biggest thing that I like to focus on with all my clients is making sure that they have a safety net. To hit back on that, what JJ was talking about, when that rainy day does come, it's always good to make sure you have at least 3 to 6 months of your monthly expenses.
What we call
saved up,
reserves.
of course.
Yep.
Yeah, putting it into a CD would be a great idea, of course, if you have extra money to allocate towards that, of course. If you get that tax check and you just throw it into a CD, depending on how long that CD is, it could be 4 to 12 months. What happens at that 8th month? What if your basement floods? That money's locked up in a CD, of course. And if people aren't familiar with how CDs work, of course, if you pull out of the CD before your maturity date, you forfeit all the interest that you earned on it. So you'd be back to square zero, back with the 1,500, and you've earned no interest on that. So I would definitely probably allocate my finances towards making sure that I have my rainy day fund first before I look into investments and such.
Yeah, so that's being wise with the money and knowing have a plan for your money, I guess I should say, right?
Yeah.
If you know, hey, there should be no reason I need this money in the next 4, 6, 8, 10 months, whatever that case may be, let's look at locking it up. And for our listeners out there that may not be familiar with CDs, certificates of deposit is what CD stands for. It's kind of like a savings account, but basically you're committing a certain amount of money to the bank for a certain period of time. It's a contract, right? And they're in return for that contract, the bank is agreeing to pay you a certain guaranteed interest rate over that period of time. But if something were to happen and you were to need to get access to those funds, you could break the contract. And banks work differently on this. Some of it's you just lose all your interest. Some of it's interest in principal. So understanding that when you're going into it as well, like what's the worst case scenario? What kind of penalty would I be looking at if I were to need to break this? But essentially, if you're going into a CD or certificate of deposit, you want to go within the intentions of not touching that money for that agreed upon period of time so you can maximize the interest that you're getting.
Yes,
right?
and I grill that into my clients every single time. If anybody comes to talk to me about a CD, I make sure that they don't need the funds whatsoever. Like I asked them, okay, well, what do you plan on doing with it now and 6 months from now? You know, what's your goal within the next year? Are you planning on making any big purchases? Are you planning for your roof to collapse or anything like that? You know, these are people that have extra tens to thousands of dollars that they're throwing into a CD because they don't need it up front. They already have allocated majority of their finances to their rainy day fund. So they can throw it into investments. They can throw it into CDs because they know that if anything happens, they still have that safety net that they can pull from. So, of course, at the same time, CDs are great, but you just need to make sure that you know that you're not going to need these finances within that time period before your CD matures, of course. But I think it's a great way to earn some quick interest, of course.
Absolutely. And it's, it's not always that way, right? Because, rates, depending on what the market's doing and where rates are at, sometimes they're good investments, sometimes they're not. Right now, in the high rate environment that we're at, they're paying a decent interest rate, so you can make some money on it. But go back 2-3 years ago when they're paying maybe 1% or 0.5%, right? Not even enough to keep up with inflation. While it's more than what your savings account is, what's the risk versus reward? You got to kind of figure out. So CDs weren't as popular a few years ago. Now that rates are in the 4-5% ranges, people can actually make a decent investment in guaranteed rate, by placing money in a CD. Yep. JD, looks like you had something to say?
Sure. I mean, we can talk dollars and cents. The thing that jumps out to me, when you talk about people using tax refunds for cell phones and getting their kids the latest Jordans or whatnot, I think it all comes back to, we talked about changing that mindset too. Quit worrying about keeping up with the Joneses. Understand, like you said, that rainy day fund. I'm putting this away for later. I don't have to have the latest, greatest. Eating out. We don't have to eat out every night. There's ways where you can cut. Coupons is another thing too. A lot of people, there's no stigma with using coupons. No. I mean, you're saving money, and it's funny because it's like when you might see somebody from a lower economic status, they look at that as a stigma. But then you'll go out to Cherry Hill or Sycamore Hills, and you know what they're doing? You have coupons because there's ways of saving money. It's the same product.
I'm always looking for deals. Every time I go to Kroger, I'm looking up on the mobile app to see what the coupons are to clip out.
So, just, take that extra time, utilize that. So, I just want to throw that in because, again, we can talk dollars and cents, but there is always, that the other part of that, understanding, your life situation. We don't have to, again, keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah. And I'm a volunteer for JA, so I go into schools and teach the JA curriculum. And I just was teaching my son's first grade class yesterday and asked them what they remembered from their kindergarten one. And one of the things we taught them in kindergarten was what's a need and what's a want, right? So we're teaching the kids at a young age, like what are needs and what are wants. And it's up to us as parents to kind of instill that as well. Like you don't have to keep up with them if it's going to put you in a detriment, like financially. Right? Buying your kids a new Jordans, but you got to go into debt to get them. Or now you may not have enough money for when the car goes out because you just spent your money on new Jordans for everybody in the family. Right? So understanding needs and wants and prioritizing, what's important and putting yourself in a strong financial situation before you start splurging, right, on that other stuff. Yeah. If you got a savings account, you got plenty of money in there, hey, by all means, if you got 6 months reserves, right, you got, if something goes wrong, you lose a job, something like that, you can still afford to pay the bills till you get back on your feet. Great. But if you don't have those 6 months reserves, do we need to go out and get a new iPhone? Right.
Be selling that old iPhone.
Selling that old iPhone.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So any other tips that you gentlemen utilize in your personal life, anything like that when it comes to savings?
I had a client about a few weeks ago. She came in. She was interested in making sure that she had a safety net because after having a conversation with her, she was interested in building her savings account because she didn't really have anything in there. So she said, well, I'm one of those people, if I don't have access to it and I can see it, I'm going to end up spending it. And I was able to go in there and basically restrict all of it so she wouldn't be able to see what was in her savings account when we set up like automatic transfers. So
kind of like out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. So all she knows is that her money, every time she gets paid, some of it is going into her savings account. We set up a date where we're going to come back in and we're going to take a look at it because she said she had some plans in the future. And I'm like, this is a great way for you to save money. If you don't have access to it, you're not going to spend it. It's like having a piggy bank again, but electronically, because before it was either you destroy your piggy bank to get to your funds, or you just keep the piggy bank intact because you don't want to break it, of course, at the same time.
JD?
I was gonna, yeah, that's beautiful. I remember when ATMs first came out. I had a buddy, he had an ATM card. I've never had an ATM card in my life. But that was his mindset. Money his parents were sending money, got deposited. He wasn't going to touch it. But you know what he did? We went to ATM 10 times a night, taking out $20.
Easy access.
So yeah. So again, you want to be cognizant of that. You're right. It's directly deposited. You have to have some willpower and some strength. I'd like to say, when you say a tip, sit down and see where your money's going. See where your expenses are. See what's coming in. I made reference on one of the other shows where I talked about, people not wanting to go to the doctor to get checked out because once you're diagnosed with something, you have to do something about it. Same deal with your finances. Let's sit down, see what we have going on. This is what I'm spending. This is my income. And then, you can be strategic about where you can cut, from and where else, you may be able to splurge on or whatnot. So.
Yeah, that's a great point there too. And I understand when something's not working, like in your case, if your thing is ATM machine, right? And hopefully that makes it harder for you to get to, but you're going to it 10 times a night, right?
Yeah.
Well, then you just wasted more money on gas every time you need to drive there. Just take out the $100 when you're there instead of going back 3 or 4 times, and understand that your process isn't working. Let's figure out another process for it. So a couple other tips there, direct deposit is a great one. A lot of employers will split your direct deposit. So if you have a checking, savings, or you set up another account, have a portion of that, a percentage or a certain dollar amount that you want to save, go directly into that other account, right? So that way, each time you get paid, it's kind of like the out of sight, out of mind. You don't have to worry about being the one to transfer it over because you're less likely to do that if you see all this money you're checking. But if a certain amount comes into checking and you're disciplined enough to say that this is what I have to live on till the next paycheck and spend, great. Don't even worry about this other one. Maybe you hide it from yourself, right? You hide it from yourself online. So when you log in, you don't see it. Out of sight, out of mind,
Exactly.
Right? Setting up multiple accounts as well, right? This could be a good process or a bad process. Think, for our listeners out there that know Mark and Ellington from DR Financial, who's a panelist on the show a lot of times. Mark's a little older, so he always tells a story about when they would break money up into envelopes, right? Have 5 or 6 different envelopes and money for different things. There's an electronic way to do that now, which is just set up multiple checking or savings accounts, most likely savings account in those instances, for different purposes. This one's for a car. This one's for vacation. This one's my true savings account. Whatever your needs are, talk to your bank. If there's no fees or no minimum balances that you have to maintain to keep those accounts free, maybe that's a good savings method. You have a certain amount of money going in there each month that saves for your specific needs that are there.
Yeah.
Right?
You said Mark was older. If I'm not mistaken, I think Dave Ramsey still teaches that, if I remember, the envelope system. So
probably does. Yeah. I don't know if that's where Mark got it from or not, but I think, yeah. Mark, yeah. Terrence, what other things are you saying in your retail environment?
So when I discuss savings accounts with just anybody in general, I feel like a lot of people misunderstand what I mean by savings. Doesn't mean if you get paid $3,000 every paycheck that you need to put at least 2,000 of it into a savings account. A lot of people need to start off small. Like, no one's going to judge you if you start off small. If you can only afford
something's better than nothing.
Exactly.
Right?
If you can only afford to put maybe $5 away now and $5 then, okay, you're still saving. That's the whole point. You want to save. Even if you're not able to save a majority of your paycheck because you have a lot of bills that you have to pay, if you're able to put something away, that is going to allow you to have a savings account because it's going to begin to grow. And what happens when you save $5 every week over the course of the next 6 years?
I think a lot of times we have a short-term mindset. We see $5. Oh, well, if I'm saving this money, it's $10. What's that going to do for me? Instead of starting to look and understand that, like, well, let's talk 3 years from now, 4 years from now, how much is going to be there, not to mention the interest if we do it the right way that we would have earned off that money instead of going and using that $5 for another cup of, Starbucks.
Exactly.
Right?
Right.
It's being put towards something.
I mean, a prime example. You think it's funny you mentioned Starbucks when restaurants. What do they do for charities now? Hey, would you like to round up to the nearest dollar that we give? I mean, think about that. Prime example. By the time they do that at the end of the day, you know how much money they made, how much money they send in these organizations. If we had that same mindset with our own personal finances, like you said, we'd be in a much better place.
Absolutely. Yep. So savings wise, we need to get ourselves into a financially stronger situation by planning ahead. I think any professional like investment advisor, any investor you're talking to, it's always a long-term outlook, right? Like I was just mentioning before. So we can't go into it with a short-term outlook of, well, I'm saving, for, $10 every month, and in 6 months I got $60, right? What is that really doing for me, right? We got to go into it with a longer-term outlook for it. So, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, you're exactly right with the long-term outlook. I was just listening to some guys the other day. That's what if you invest, you can't be looking at it every day. I know they got the day trade and commercials and all that, but there are no quick hitters that are out there. It's got to be some money that you're willing to, put away and let it mature and grow that you're not going to watch. But going back to your statistics, I think we're speaking to a different group, a different audience. And it's like what Terrence says, you might have some amount that you might want to put in our 3-month CDs, 3 months, 4 months, whichever that is, if you can do that, or bring it to an account, money markets, there's different options. And I think you touched on it, their relationship with the bank. Sit down. I mean, Terrence, every time he talks about how he's explaining and working with people. Hopefully there's a Terrence at each and every bank that's out there that you can go out and you had a relationship and they can guide and navigate and you figure out together. You're not by yourself. That's the thing you want to say. You're not by yourself. You want somebody that's working with you. This is their field. If I know if somebody comes to me, if I don't have the answer, I'm gonna get you somebody that does have the answer, and we can work through the process together. So.
Yep, absolutely.
And I would definitely agree with that. It's definitely a tough conversation to have with some clients, especially when you ask them, okay, well, I see your savings account doesn't have anything in it. Do you have a plan set in place to grow your savings? Well, no, I never thought about savings. Okay, but why?
So what do you recommend to somebody that says that to you, that doesn't have a plan?
I recommend that they become open-minded. I'm getting no benefit from this. I'm doing this solely to benefit you in the future. I told all my clients, I want you all to become millionaires. I want everybody to be rich. That's what it is. That's what my sole purpose is, to help you grow your finances here. So when I see that you have other accounts that don't have anything in it, I want to know why. Like, why are you not trying to save for your own future? Don't you have children? Don't you have, hopes and dreams and goals that you would like to achieve?
So just I don't have any extra money, right? I'm living paycheck to paycheck. I don't have any extra money to save, Terrence.
Let's reevaluate our expenses. Let's reevaluate where our money is being allocated towards.
And how do we do that?
We set up a budget.
Boom. That's where I was going. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. So everybody thinks they don't have extra money out there. That's why there's no money in the savings account. Well, it's just because you need to sit down and budget and plan. As we've discussed before, is most people, right? Not everybody, but most people can sit down and find where they're spending money that is not a need. It's a want, right? And how badly do you want to get out of your financial situation, right? Do you want to build up a savings account? Then we need to start cutting back. To your point, the doctor's theory, right? Nobody wants to go to the doctor because once they get diagnosed, they're faced with that. Now they have to deal with it. Well, nobody wants to put a budget together because now they have to realize that, well, these are the things that make me happy and that I want that. But if I have to cut back on that to go here, needs versus want, what's more important, right? So sitting down and establishing a budget is a great place to find that money to start saving.
Yeah, like I had a point, and I think I just lost it. But yeah, the key, we're talking about budgeting. Yeah, if I'm covered, my primary job, I'm stretched thin, but I've got everything covered. What's another way of making more money?
Second job, got outside income.
There's so many side gigs out there. Uber, Lyft.
There you go.
Dash.
So now that side gig, when we talk about not touching some money, everything I make with that side gig is going over here. This over here, I'm paying Peter. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Just
leave it
to
alone.
throw something out there, betting on the March Madness games is not a good savings plan.
But I'm
right?
glad you said that though. All these online bettings,
Mm-hmm.
that's a tough one. There's people out there that are leaving jobs thinking they could,
Mm-hmm.
can make money off of that. And that is not a plan B, people. I'm here to tell you
It's not a plan A, B, or C.
A, yes, no.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
That's kind of the Powerball savings plan. I'm going to go invest $2 into the Powerball, and one day it's going to pay off for it.
And that's a need for a lot of people. I'm guaranteed that's right there. They're paying that Powerball. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. So with our time we got left today, we talked a little bit about savings. We talked about banking. One of the things that's on top of my mind, a little off those topics, but still having to do with banking, is fraud. Right? We've experienced some things here recently that I just wanted to get out to the listeners out there when it's talking to them about fraud and things to be aware of. And Terrence, I'd love to hear about anything that you're seeing on your side as well. But one of the things is, especially with the introduction of like AI out there, is the different ways that we're going to be scammed. One of the ones that I just witnessed with a client was they called pretending to be somebody from our fraud department saying, hey, something happened to your account and we need that second step authentication code that was just sent to you to be able to access this, right? It says right there in that code, do not give this code to anybody. But people aren't alert. They're not aware. They don't see that. They're in the moment of somebody talking to them and they fell victim to that fraud. Right. So making people aware of the different methods of fraud out there. If somebody ever calls you on the phone and pretends or maybe they are from your bank, right? It's okay to say, I'm not comfortable with this conversation. I'll call you back at the trusted number that I have. Right. Or let me call my banker. That's why it's so important, to have a relationship with a banker for that, somebody that you trust there. And that's what I told my client as well. I was like, hey, sorry if I haven't instilled this into you, but I should be the first step. If anybody ever calls you from the bank, whether it's true or not, if you're not comfortable with that conversation, you're not sure, to say, let me call my banker, right? Because I'm inside, I can find out what's going on with that and make sure that it's something legitimate so you don't fall victim to that.
Yeah, but it's definitely one of my go-tos. I'm like, if you don't feel comfortable, I said, if you don't know, I said, hang up the phone and call me. I said, I don't care what time it is. I said, shoot me an email if you're not able to call me. I've had a number of clients come in or call me, shoot me an email. Hey, I got this email. Hey, somebody called me saying this. Okay, well, do you bank there? No, well, no, I don't bank there. I'm like, have you ever done any business with that financial institution? Well, no. Go ahead and disregard it. I mean, there's no reason for you to front about it. I'm like, it's not important. There was another case where somebody actually was able to compromise somebody's account information, and within a matter of like 10 to 15 minutes they were there. We shut down the old accounts and we got the new accounts set up. It's just some extra steps that we take to help keep our clients protected, of course. There's been an increase in debit card fraud, of course. There's been an increase in people scamming people by altering their voices so it sounds like somebody else is asking the other information as well too. So they're getting extremely creative, of course.
And that's with the introduction of AI that I was referring to, is that they can duplicate a voice, right? So somebody calls you, it could be, hey, it's my mom, right? It's my dad. It sounds just like them. And they're, hey, I just need your account number to come doing your taxes over here, and boom, now you've just been compromised. You really never know, and it's getting harder and harder to do that. So making yourself aware and understanding what different methods are being utilized out there are key, because tying it back to our savings is we work hard for our money. Right? We're building up this savings account. The last thing you want to do is fall victim to somebody that's now trying to take that money, from us. So making sure you're aware of the different things that are going on out there.
Exactly right. When you get those numbers that you don't recognize, hello,
Oh,
hello,
sure. Yeah.
that's getting that voice that you're talking about.
Oh, yes. So I yes. See what you're saying.
Yeah, you have to be careful with that number. 'Cause, hello, who is it? Hello. So now they've got your voice, they got the reflection, all that. The other big is wire fraud, in the banking industry. Have to be extremely careful, with that, and cover all your checks and balances. A big indicator, too, whether you're a consumer or in the industry, a lot of times they're always trying to act like there's an urgency. Just like you said, we need your number, that number that they're requesting for you now. You need to pay this now. Go down to your local bank and take out, There's never, it's always going to be that sense of urgency that they're trying to present. But again, the best thing you could do is pick up that phone and confirm.
To your point, if you tell the person on the phone, hey, let me call you back, and they start pushing you, red flag, huge red flag, right?
Another huge one is if you say, well, I'm going to reach out to my bank. If they are adamant about you never reaching out to your bank, because of course we're going to see right through it. And I've actually had somebody suffer, but I was like, well, they told me not to call you guys. I said, well, why would you not call us?
Well, yeah, that should be a huge red flag. And those are just things.
I'm like, you come to us when you need anything, when you needed to open an account, when you needed to invest in things, when you need to close accounts, add documents to your account. I said, you come to us for everything. I was like, you weren't sure. I said, why? I said, you can call us. I said, we're not going to be upset. I'm like, but you made a mistake, and people make mistakes all the time. I said, so there's no reason for us to be upset. Yes, it happened. We're sorry, but we're going to do everything that we can to fix this for you, of course.
And having a responsibility on yourself as a consumer to be aware of that stuff, because some people have that mentality like, well, what do I care? Because if I get taken, the bank's just going to pay me back, right? The bank's not just paying you back, right? The bank wouldn't be in business if they're just refunding everybody's money that they were careless with and gave out information now got stolen from it because you're relying on them to just get it back, right? There's processes that are involved. So yes, somebody's covering it, but all this stuff also leads to the increase in costs for everything.
Correct.
So when we're talking about why do banks charge $34 for an overdraft fee, right? What's that really cost them to do that? May not cost them for that specific transaction for that, but that's a way for them to generate income that reimburses themselves for other things too, like money and losses that they take due to clients doing that. They are offering a certain level of protection, right, to get your business to make sure you don't fall victim to that stuff, but you also have a responsibility to protect yourself as well, not just rely on the bank to pay you back. Right. I'm going to throw my son under the bus here a little bit. He's 18, has his first bank account. He's had it for a couple of years now, but he experienced some fraud back in Christmas time. His debit card was somebody got his debit card number, made some purchases out in California. And no matter how experienced I am, and this is what I do for a living, he never did anything about it. Guided him. Like, all you got to do is call this number. He didn't do it. Right. He just locked down his debit card, right? Because you can do it on the phone there and then unlock it when he needs to use it. I'm like, you just let somebody take $80 out of your account. And on top of that, they still have your account number out there, right? You can't have that nonchalant attitude about like, hey, it's more of a hassle for me to change my debit card or make a call than to get my money back. You may not care about that money. I'll take it if you want to get it back. But that debit card there, somebody still got that number. What are you going to do next time when they take $100 or $200 out, something like that? We have to monitor, care about this stuff, and take it seriously.
No question. And when your bank sends out notices,
you work hard for your money.
Correct. Yeah. They send out notices and alert. Make sure you read them. Financial institutions are always talking about, we're never going to ask for your credit card. Your social security number. Any contact information. They're very clear that what they're not going to do and tell you how to contact them. Follow those alerts. Do what they ask. Yeah,
and understand staying in touch with your accountant and your statements and all that stuff, because you don't have an unlimited time period to make claims and get that money back. Right? There are certain time periods that you have to meet. Like if you're outside of that, that was your responsibility to notice it within there. Outside of those, that falls outside of their insurance or whatever it is that they're using to reimburse.
Yeah, I would say this too. To your point, to like your son. Again, anytime you're traveling out of the state or whatnot, let your bank know. So then therefore, when you're making these purchases, they kind of can track it. But if you're in the city, so now something's being purchased in California, they can let you know. They let you know that alert. I've told people there's been times where the bank has called me and said, hey, asked some questions when I was out of town. I don't let them know. And, some people get upset, but I'm not upset by that because I'm like, hey, that's a protection. I appreciate that. So understand that. Take that protection as a positive and not a negative.
Yeah. And just for the record on that, that's a teaching moment for him because, I'm not doing this for you. I'm not going to call. I don't think I can. They need to talk with you. It's your debit card, but I'm not going to take you in. You need to take responsibility. This is your money. You got to care about it more than I do. Right? So I've mentioned it a couple times. You haven't done anything about it. Hey, you work hard for your money. I would think that you'd want it a little bit more than that for it. But anything else to add?
Just like two last things, of course. With a travel notice, of course, that is a great way for you to protect your account as well. If we know where you're going to be traveling, so if we say you're in Oregon and we see. Do you
still encourage people to do it with PNC? I know
travel notices.
Yeah.
Oh, all the time. Like we have people come in that travel out of the country all the time, and we set a travel notice for them. Yeah. The other one is when it comes to like fraud and debit card fraud. That's another reason why we tell people to open savings accounts. Because if you just have a checking account and you don't have a savings account, that debit card is linked to that checking account. So if you keep 30 grand in your checking account and somebody steals your debit card information, that 30 grand is up for grabs.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know you only need like $300 in your checking account, put it in your savings account. That debit card is only linked to the checking account. So if they do steal your debit card, they have less money that they're getting access to versus you keeping all of it in one account. It's not a safe idea to keep all your money in one account when you could keep it in a savings account. That's the whole reason, is so it's being safe.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we're saving it for you. But when you leave it in a checking account and you're a victim of fraud, you're just letting your finances be free and willy-nilly for anybody to take at that point.
Yeah. Another good tip on that is alerts, setting up alerts for certain things. So
Another
you can set
reason why
up
they
in
push
most
the
banks,
mobile apps and stuff like that too.
If a certain transaction happens over a certain amount, you're notified. So do you want to do it at $20, which is an everyday transaction? Probably not. But do you spend $200 every day, $500, whatever that is? Set it at a limit like that. So if you do see something, like if something happens like that, you're going to get notified right away, right? You're going to be proactive on that rather than reactive, waiting for a few weeks until you notice it on your account. Right. So stay in touch with that. So, gentlemen, good conversation today around banking, savings, and added a little bit of fraud in there as well for it. So anything to add before we get out of here?
Nothing. Remember, if you're loved, supported, and have a great quality of life, you're always wealthy.
All right. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Until then, our neutral voices. Peace.